Hello, Winchester. Welcome to Visual Radio. The views and opinions on Visual Radio, those are the host and his guests, Robert K. Elder and Frank Dello Stritto, both book authors, of course, and not necessarily those of the WinCam Board of Directors, its staff, its management, members, people of Winchester. Hello. Hey, if you were just watching, our own Judy Kellerman taped that Mahoney's Indoor Winters Farmers Market. Now that is a novel idea because people love these farmers markets, but a Winters Indoor Farmers Market. And Judy did what I like people doing, which is videotaping these events and getting the word out on public access TV. Now, my guest is Robert K. Elder, but before him, we're going to call Johnny Byers. If he's in. He's watching the games, but there's no game on tonight. If he's not in, we won't talk to him. That is the right number, and he just called me back here. So, okay, John will call back if he wants to. We've got 3 minutes before I talk to my other guest. Now, the big news today, of course, is that TV3 Medford, that you've had to listen to us for 3 years now, yapping about TV3 Medford. We've been fighting the good fight, and as of September 30th, it just hit the newspapers today. It hit the patch, it hit the Medford Transcript. The Board of Directors of Medford Community Cablevision, Inc. voted to shut down. It's over. Our years of fighting up at the City Council means that there will be a brand new public access station in Medford. Now, what the mayor's going to do, he's going to allow the educational channel to interview the candidates, because guess who's been yelling at the City Council about allowing the candidates airtime? That's right, yours truly. So the mayor is listening, and I talked to Martha Coakley. Thank you, Martha. If you've got Verizon, Martha Coakley might be watching tonight. Thank you, Martha Coakley. I met her at Dempsey's. She was very nice to me, come over, shook my hand, and I said, how can we get you on public access when there is no access? She goes, I heard about that. We're going to look into it. Well, it's about 2 weeks later. I think Martha Coakley did look into it. I think she called her good friend Mayor McGlynn. And here we are today, very excited, very happy. It looks like a new dawn for Medford, which is a good thing. So let's try John Byers one more time, just to wish him a happy, and then we'll get on with it. Johnny, I've only got 2 minutes with you.
Okay.
Congratulations, John Byers.
I know.
You're a winner.
Team today, yep.
Your sports show's coming back on the air, and I'm going to fight on Tuesday night to get you on the educational channel before they open the new access station in Medford.
Well, that's good news. I mean, come on. I mean, this fight's been going on for a long time here in Medford, and it finally took the mayor to grow a set. So
No. The mayor didn't do this, John. What happened was, on October 8th, there's going to be an arraignment of one of the former board members of TV3. That's all I'm going to say.
That we know, and that's another thing, too. Because of that, it forced his hand.
It forced TV3's hand, and the mayor's going to take credit for them shutting down on their own. They shut down on their own.
Right.
Okay? The mayor had nothing to do with this. They shut down on their own. He's getting all the assets of the station. So now we have an access station, John, and you and I are going to be at the forefront with the City Council.
Now, the thing to do is we got to get a group together to come in, get that access station.
Well, let's not even go there yet, because let's just say things are happening. Now, someone said to me today that a certain individual on Tuesday might start singing like a canary. Did you think of that? I haven't thought of that.
No, I don't know. We'll have to talk.
We'll have to find out about that, but let's not explore that. Let's not mention any names.
Later on tonight in our private conversations.
Yeah, but there might be canaries in the air.
Well, yeah.
Hovering over Somerville.
I've been saying to you, and this isn't private because we
no names, please.
A couple of people. We said once the first domino falls, every domino will fall after that, and this first domino fell, and it was a big domino, and now the big domino falls, and every domino after that is starting to fall. And
you know what? You can thank Uncle Gene.
Yes.
And Council President.
Yes.
and now the former president. So that's 3 for 3, Johnny. I think we're doing good.
Yeah, we're doing great.
I got to talk to Robert Elder now, so you have a good night.
And I'll talk to you later tonight, my friend.
Congratulations.
Bye. Yep.
And that's Johnny Byers, our sports host, who is thrilled because he just loves being on in Medford, and he's going to be back. And we're going to fight for him to be on the educational channel before the new access station is built. So this is very exciting. We love public access. We all love public access. It's all about community.
Rob Elder.
Robert Elder, I am very honored to be speaking with you tonight.
Hey, thanks for calling.
Great book.
Oh, thank you.
The best film you've never seen. Now, I'm a movie buff. I'm in the middle of reviewing the book for TMR Zoo.
Cool.
Being a movie buff, I'm just attracted to this, but this is a book for everyone.
Oh, hopefully. I mean, we have everything from, sort of noir film to B movies to, obscure French films. So hopefully, yes.
And what a book like this does is it turns people on to forgotten movies.
Yeah, and not only that, but not just forgotten movies, but movies that didn't get a chance, like that people sort of actually didn't like the first time around. So I talked to 35 directors. I said, tell me about these films that are close to your heart, that other people, savaged or said bad things about, and, help me rewrite film history.
It's a fascinating idea. Your book before this got a lot of notoriety. It was along the same lines, correct?
It's sort of a sister book. It's actually called The Film That Changed My Life, and that is sort of directors telling me a story about the film that they saw that made them want to become a director. So they're not exactly the same kind of book, but they're related.
Okay, can I throw one at you that's not in your book?
Oh, tell me.
Mick Jagger's performance.
Performance. Yeah, I have not. You're ahead of me. I haven't seen that. Tell me about it.
Dare I tell you, I saw it in like 72.
Uh-huh.
And it was in my top 5 films along with Bride of Frankenstein. Dare I tell you that?
Uh-huh.
But it truly is an interesting underground movie, and there's a soundtrack that has the great song Memo from Turner with Jagger singing. So the soundtrack is really worth getting because it can enlighten you. In fact, maybe if you hear the soundtrack first, then watch the movie, you'll see why I rave about it.
Okay. I will put that on my list. The one thing that I really enjoy about this book and talking about this book is it's just a chance to talk with folks like you and friends, and it's like playing deep cuts on records. It's like we're trying to sort of turn our love of film over to other folks.
What we do here, Robert, we'll get into the book in a second, but at the quarter of hour, we call Frank Dello Stritto down in Houston, who's the author of Bela Lugosi, Vampire Over London, Bela Lugosi in Britain. And for like 2.5 years, we've been talking about the public domain movies we air here on Friday nights.
Oh, great.
So we've got this whole catalog of films, much like what you talk about, because some of them got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, and a few of them are public domain. People forget, and also people forget that It's a Wonderful Life was in the public domain. I mean, that's why it's the hit it is, because when it came out, it was not a hit. In fact, it lost money, and the reason you saw it every Christmas was because it was cheap for everybody to play. So now it's recognized as the classic it is because it's so ingrained in our culture.
Isn't that so odd, though, that something majestic like that has to not succeed in order to succeed?
Well, I mean, it was a darker sort of Christmas movie, I think, than people were used to. It was Jimmy Stewart's first role after World War II, and I think that also made him a slightly darker performer. So, if you look at it, there's nothing that says Christmas blockbuster on it.
Right. Did you sit down and meet with all these directors face to face?
It was a mix. Some were in person, some were in phone, some were over dinner. It took me about 9 years in total to get 35 directors together. So it just really depended. It was like a giant game of telephone.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So when you're having dinner with one of these great directors, things certainly digress from the book. Did you get any insight into their artistry outside of what they wrote in your book?
Yeah. I mean, that's actually a lot of that still makes it in the book. Like I'm able to talk to Danny Boyle about how he wants to die. Michel Gondry, in my previous book, he talks about this film that changed his life, this sort of sequel to the Red Balloon. Many people know that director, died in Iran. I think he died in a helicopter crash, and he's like, you know what? I want it to be a very long way from now, but I want to die on set. So you get all these interesting insights, and you end up, I think, in some of the conversations, learning more about the directors than you do about the films. But that's part of why I love doing it so much.
What's interesting is and I don't say his name right, Guillermo del Toro.
Close enough, yeah, Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, he's chapter 3, and as I've got your book, he comes on NPR promoting the DVD release of Pacific Rim. So it's fascinating to hear the guy's voice as I have your book and reading the chapter, It's kind of like, and it's a different interview, so you're getting double insight on the guy.
Well, and he's particularly great because he talked to both myself and Terry Gross a little bit about, being raised by his grandmother, who was so protective of him and so Catholic that she was afraid that his love of monsters and science fiction and fantasy endangered his soul. So, she actually performed an exorcism on him.
Whoa.
So he's very funny about that, and he sort of glosses over it. But I say, this is sort of, Guillermo, this is extraordinary. There's one thing to watch The Exorcist, and then there's, it's quite another to be the subject of an exorcism. And he just sort of waves it off and laughs. He's like, well, she was an amateur. She wasn't a pro. So yeah. So you get all these interesting biographical details about, how our loves touch our lives.
The interview I heard on NPR was On Point, which is a show done here in Boston on NPR. So Terry Gross is on the same station, but it was a second interview with him, which is good. The more the merrier.
Yeah.
The other thing is, that old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. You're centerfold with the black and whites.
Yeah.
Just Anthony Perkins in the trial makes me want to pull the movie out. I've never seen it. And watch it.
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of an unrelentingly grim film, but it's a great adaptation of Franz Kafka's The Trial. And he is great in it, and, it's an Orson Welles film. And actually in This Is Orson Welles, which is this great book in which Peter Bogdanovich, it's a dialogue between the two of them. It's the film that Bogdanovich says basically that he has the most trouble with. And Orson bristles, so it's really interesting to sort of see this film get its due because it also has a more, if it can be said to be more hopeful, it has a more hopeful ending than the book, and I think one that actually is more fitting.
The photo is extraordinary because it's got Tony Perkins with two paintings. It looks like a post office. I'm not sure, and then there's these white ceiling panels with the black lines. Just an extraordinary 8.5 black and white film photo.
Oh yeah. Well, that's all Wells' composition. It's amazing.
It really is. And then you've got Herbert Marshall and Miriam Hopkins, Trouble in Paradise. Another wonderful photo that kind of just draws you in.
Yeah, and finding these, it wasn't easy. Some of these films, again, were not blockbusters. So not many people save stills of them, but the lovely folks at Indiana University helped me track them down. Some of them actually came from Pauline Kael's collection because she saved a whole bunch of press kits. So I am yet again indebted to Pauline.
Now, a film that I have trouble with is Joe versus the Volcano.
Okay, and why do you have trouble?
I liked it when I saw it, and now in retrospect I feel, man, that was just too silly.
It is silly, and I have problems with the way it ends, but it is such sort of this weird, enigmatic, kind of wannabe Tim Burton kind of comedy, early Tim Burton. Meg Ryan plays 3 different roles, and it's the first film where it's Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks together. People forget, that this is the film that sort of launched that sort of weird, romantic tension that they had in Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail, which, J. Duplass, who's the director who chooses it, points out that, they have this comfortable romantic tension. You don't ever feel like they want to devour one another. It's almost like non-sexual love, but they make such an appealing on-camera couple that is interesting to watch that evolve, starting with this movie.
So none of the directors brought up Myra Breckinridge, huh?
No, I think everybody tried to steer clear.
Really?
I think, well, and who knows, maybe I'll do another volume and they'll dig it up, but no, and it never came up in any other conversations, interestingly enough.
So Under the Volcano is separate from Joe versus the Volcano, but we got 2 volcano movies in your book.
Yes, 2 volcano movies, a couple of noir films, more than a couple of flops. And then, even some films that won Oscars. I mean, this was my biggest fight with Kevin Smith, is he picked A Man for All Seasons. And I said, Kevin, I think that swept the Oscars. I think it was 1963 or 66. It doesn't really qualify. And he said, well, show me anyone under 30 who's seen it. And in fact, I'm showing it. I'm going to go on tour in the Northwest in the middle of October, and we're going to show it in Eugene, Oregon. And the film programmer hadn't even seen it. So Kevin proves me wrong.
Well, and again, I certainly know the title being my age, but yeah, it escaped me. That movie escaped me, and I'm a film buff, and so I have to give him a vote of confidence too. That is a good one to pull out of the mothballs.
Yeah, and it's a great film. I mean, I don't think anybody remembers it because there are no stars in it. It's got the guy who played the captain in Jaws. Like, that's it. It's the most recognizable actor, and then you have Paul Scofield, who carries the entire film on this amazing script. And the script was originally a play, and I actually love watching it and comparing his portrayal to like the modern day accounts in like The Tudors, which ran on Showtime, and there's even a couple of books that bring up the Henry VIII reign again. So I love sort of going back through all of that.
It is fascinating. Now, it took you 9 years to do this book. Mm-hmm. Are there outtakes, things that you didn't have room for?
Yes, and I actually I want them to show up in future books. So Pete Docter, who directed Up and Monsters Inc., he chose this Jacques Tati film called Playtime, which at the time we talked about it was nowhere to be found. Now it has a very nice DVD release. Mm-hmm. And then, am I allowed to swear on this?
I'd rather not, because we're in the 8 o'clock hour.
Okay. Well, there is a documentary that Robert Frank directed about the Rolling Stones, about the Rolling Stones, and the first word is a swear word, but the second word is blues. And Andi Tolminer, who is a documentarian, sort of picked that as her choice. And so those two sort of hit the cutting room floor, and it makes me sort of cringe every time I think about them, but I think they will get a second life somewhere.
Did you get the backstory on Blank Blank Blues?
Yeah. Robert Frank, filmed it. The Stones did not want it to sort of see the light of day. In fact, it has this very, very convoluted legal baggage that comes with it, in that it cannot be screened unless Robert Frank himself is in the room. It's a very, very interesting thing. So the only way you can find this movie is to basically find it on the gray market, or there are some places that have it online. So it's a very, very unusual film, and kind of distasteful in places. But Andi picked it, and again, it'll find a home in a second volume.
Well, put it in your book along with Performance, maybe.
Perhaps.
Here's a little backstory from me on this. I managed and was business partners with the late Jimmy Miller. He produced the Rolling Stones.
Oh, yeah.
So Jimmy died in 94. Mm-hmm. So probably around 87, 88, 89, it came through town. And they had one seat left, and the promoter, because of my affiliation with Jimmy, said, you can have the seat. A lawyer I had at the time begged me for the seat, so I gave it to him. because I have a gray area version now of it. But it's just kind of one of those things. Yeah, it is such an underground. That's a whole other avenue for you because that film never got the chance to even have a splash.
No, and you can see why. You can see why the Stones and their lawyers wanted to bury it. It's an unflattering portrait, not necessarily of them, but of the people around them. There's a scene that I remember that's particularly distasteful where there's a guy basically negotiating with a prostitute, and it's just like, oh God, get me out of this scene.
And it's but it's art, it's cinema, It is,
and it's Robert Frank. People forget that Robert Frank, among other things, gave us the book The Americans, this amazing photography book. He's done films. Jack Kerouac, Love the Americans, wrote the introduction to it. And Frank led a very, very interesting life. But I think had his heart broken about this particular documentary.
Now, films like that can't be on HBO all the time. Maybe they can, but for whatever reason, the Stones or whatever,
Sure.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
Maybe that's why Man for All Seasons, because I really like the convenience of cable TV, where with zillions of DVDs and the ability to download, it's still more convenient to be on the couch and just surf.
Right.
So I don't see a Man for All Seasons. So maybe it just escaped the cable, venue.
There's all sorts of reasons. I mean, for example, for a certain generation, Joe versus the Volcano, I think, played in a loop on TBS for years. It was sort of hard not to see. But then you come across something like The Super Cops, which Edgar Wright championed. It's this amazing Gordon Parks film. And I think part of the problem was it was a film, and I forget the studio. Maybe it's Paramount, but the cops in it are called Batman and Robin. So this weird, almost like rights issue, So things are lost for all sorts of reasons.
It is fascinating. Now, there was a site on the web. One site on the web had your Guillermo interview in its entirety. I forget which site.
I don't know. We let someone excerpt it. Maybe it was RogerEbert.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. There it is again on the web, and I liked that you could actually read a chapter of your book on the web.
Yeah. We try to get it out there so people will be curious enough to read the rest of the book.
So another site had a movie I really like, which is called City Hall.
Yeah.
John Cusack. And would you consider that a best film you've never seen, or is that in the mainstream enough?
I think that's pretty mainstream. It has Pacino and Danny Aiello, and as you say, Cusack. I think it's got some other heavy hitters in it. But
Fonda, I think. Bridget Fonda, maybe?
Perhaps. But I mean, I don't think it matters who's in it, though. I think, like, for example, I love this film with Donald Sutherland in it and William H. Macy called Panic. And, like, I think myself and maybe Roger Ebert saw it. Like, no one else ever saw it. It's directed by Henry Bremel, who recently just passed away. And he was best known as a director of Homicide. But it is this amazing film about a hitman and his relationship with his father, who is also a hitman, and his young son. So I always recommend that because I think it's a masterpiece that no one has seen.
Now, with all these interviews under your belt and all these people talking about movies, you as a writer, do you get the feeling you want to do a book on your own about your favorite 35 best films people have never seen?
I don't know. I mean, perhaps, but there's also sort of like, who wants to read that? Who is the market for that? I think these directors are far more fascinating than I could be about unseen films. I think the fact that they love them and they bring so much of themselves to the book, I think that is far more interesting than anything I could bring.
Now, after you did the interviews, was there any film that you were turned on to that you really like and that you wouldn't have if you didn't write this book?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of them. Certainly Peter Bogdanovich turned me on to Trouble in Paradise, which is an Ernst Lubitsch film, and is just a classic, period. It's just an unadulterated classic, and everybody should see it. Sean Durkin He directed me to a place called 10 Rillington Place, a movie called 10 Rillington Place, which is about a serial killer. It's a real story in which Richard Attenborough plays the serial killer. And Sean directed Martha, Marcy May, Marlene. Let me see. There's something else here. And also there's just like weird sort of guilty pleasures. Like, for example, Jonathan Levine, who did 50-50 and Warm Bodies, his choice was Can't Stop the Music, which, if, depending on your depth of film knowledge, it was one of the first films, I think it's tied with Xanadu, to get the Razzie. For the first Razzie, it's the Village People musical. Mm-hmm. And it is sort of terrible in all the ways you might think, but also sort of this amazing document of a time and a place and of a band that is struggling for relevancy. It's 1980 by the time it comes out. Disco is virtually over. The main sort of vocalist has left. In fact, the guy who sings YMCA, he has left the band. But it's really interesting to watch this movie with Bruce Jenner and Steve Guttenberg, and there's a lot of joy in this sort of wreck of a musical.
Now, chapter 30, you've got Peter Bogdanovich, Trouble in Paradise.
Right.
And, Last Picture Show was, made him a really famous movie. But Targets got lost in the shuffle, so Targets is actually one of these type of movies.
It is. I think because Bogdanovich came, a tour, I think people, love Paper Moon and What's Up Doc and, even, Mask. He's had this amazing, great career, and I think because of that, people sort of reach back and find his other films. But Targets is a really, really great film, and I love it not only for just his directing, and I believe that it was a Roger Corman film, but also like it's really of a time and a place. It's about a sniper who positions himself inside a drive-in theater movie screen. And where are there even drive-in movie theaters anymore?
But for a horror film fan like myself, Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
And it was like one of his final movies, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think he was under contract, it was very much like an Ed Wood situation where, I think he was, supposed to do a film, and Peter just said, listen, I just want you to play you, basically. And he is so good in it. And you see him without makeup, unvarnished. It's a very, very strong performance, and I'm glad he got to give it before he passed away.
Karloff and Lugosi are two actors that really deserve a lot more credit because they were brilliant, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, and again, because they were, under a ton of makeup, and they were from a different time, perhaps the patina of that is not very fair to them, and we're not allowed to sort of see them as they were.
Now, how did you interview Arthur Hiller?
Arthur Hiller, I have had sort of a cinematic crush on for years. Arthur directed one of my favorite films of all time, which is The Americanization of Emily, with James Garner and Julie Andrews and James Coburn. So I just tracked him down. He's got an office, he's got the same secretary he's had for 30 years. And he directed not only The Americanization of Emily, but The Silver Streak and a bunch of films that I love. So I just called him up and asked if he wanted to chat.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So he was one of your heroes. Did you get a lot of insight that you needed?
Yeah, I mean, he is he's a guy from a different era. He came from directing television. And so just understanding what his point of view was, and he picked, this really long version of The Iceman Cometh with Lee Marvin in it, it's this 1973 version. Kino International just put it out a few years ago again, but it's a Eugene O'Neill play that is really, really difficult, and to see it done by Lee Marvin, again, it's sort of a marvel.
When you've got stacks of things to review, it's hard to know all the movies that are out there, or all the media. It's just ridiculous these days. Mm-hmm. Institute Benjamenta, I would never have ever have heard about without your book.
Yeah. Well, and it is the live-action film. It's the first live-action film by the brothers Quay, and I think most people have seen the brothers Quay's work if they haven't even heard of them. Street of Crocodiles. They do that sort of weird stop-motion animation. Frida. They have that whole section in Frida. I think is pretty well known. But yeah, this is a very challenging film about a school for butlers, and it's very dreamlike. And I also would not have heard it if someone hadn't brought it to my attention. And
the director who talks about it is a twin himself, and the Quay brothers are twin brothers. Right.
So Michael Polish, part of the Polish brothers, he did Twin Falls, Idaho, and North Fork. We're both Montanans, so we both have bonded over that. So that brings sort of an extra layer of insight.
Fascinating. So you were born where?
Montana, Billings, Montana.
And where are you now?
I live in Chicago.
Oh, okay. So Montana's a lot different from Chicago.
A little bit, yeah.
Did you meet Roger Ebert?
Yeah, I mean, I was a critic at the Chicago Tribune, so I sat in the same screening room with him for 5 years.
Figured. That's very cool. So he was a lot of fun on TV.
He was a lot of fun in person as well. And just sort of observing him and the way he dealt with people and the way he was so prolific. And always, again, very kind to me. Even a few weeks before his death, he wrote me this just amazing blurb for the book, and it's one more thing that I owe him.
Well, that's amazing, and that just gives the book a little bit more of a luster for those of us who liked Mr. Ebert.
Yeah. No, he was again quite a film mind.
Now, do you dabble in making movies, or do you make movies?
No, I don't. There might be like student films out there, but no, at a certain point, I just had to choose journalism or film, and I chose journalism. Interesting.
Now, these films are all American movies, correct?
No, there's some, there's a French film in there, there's...
I knew that. That was a dumb question, sorry.
That's all right. No, I tried to cast a wide net.
Right, and where I was going with the question was there's so much media these days, like you go on YouTube, and those of us who love Dracula with Lugosi, there's the Spanish version of Dracula, which they filmed at the same exact moment in time.
Huh.
There must be a lot of Bollywood movies and stuff that would just really miss the mainstream that some of these directors probably find and love, and I wonder if that stuff will surface in future volumes of your books if you continue this train of thought.
Yeah. Well, and there's actually a Bollywood film in the first book, the film that changed my life. Garunda Chadha, who directed Bend It Like Beckham and a whole bunch of other great films. She chose this film called Sometimes East, Sometimes West, that is become this sort of cult film, and I think Bollywood, again, is underappreciated by American audiences. I actually reviewed for the Chicago Tribune the film. It's called Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, Sometimes Happy, Sometimes Sad. And it basically featured like the Mount Rushmore of great Indian actors, like, 2 or 3 generations of great Indian actors. But it was like 3.5 hours long, and 2 of those hours were a flashback.
Whoa.
They make epic films, and their films are also melodramas. And I don't think for the American sensibilities that modern Americans have the patience for melodrama. So I think that's one of the cultural barriers.
The fascinating thing about that Bollywood exists, and we have this information superhighway that is cable TV. I don't understand why there's not a Bollywood channel. And maybe having a fellow like you come on and talk a little bit about, and different critics from around the country. To me, it's just if you have the superhighway, put the material out there, because I bet there's a big audience just waiting to see something different.
Yeah, I'm sure that exists somewhere. I mean, I haven't seen it on my cable package, but, there are enough people out there who are knowledgeable, not only native critics, but folks like David Shute, who's a critic in LA, who's written extensively about Bollywood. There's certainly enough people and there's certainly enough interest for it. But, with all of the cable out there and all of the on-demand, the one thing that I'm lamenting the loss of is DVD extras. So it's hard to get, because all of the DVD extras have basically gone to Blu-ray now. And so if you wanted to listen to a worthwhile, commentary track or worthwhile documentary, you have a very narrow way to see it now. Whereas before, almost every DVD came with it. But with on-demand, there's not even that option. So I hope that opens up.
I think I just picked up my 5th version of Terminator 2 because the Blu-ray has so much more on it.
Yes. Yeah.
And what did Cameron say? I think James Cameron said, we're now selling the donut holes.
Yes, it's right. It's the same thing with the Beatles. They talked about when they released the anthology. If they released anything else, it would be called, scraping the bottom of the barrel. But then you hear about this amazing 12-minute song that they did that is yet unreleased. So part of it is just commerce. They put out new editions because they can.
The Beatles are very stingy. They have a lot more. I was over a engineer's house in Connecticut on Tuesday. Alan Bershaw, he writes the Wolfgang's Vault. You ever see that on the web?
No, tell me.
Wolfgang's Vault is Bill Graham, the late concert promoter.
Oh, it's all his tapes.
All his tapes, but now a lot of other people's tapes. So the engineer that they had purchased a lot of tapes from, Stuart Dinky Dawson, a friend of mine, we drove down to Connecticut to see Bershaw. Bershaw is the archivist for Jewel, the singer Jewel.
Yes.
So he's been with Jewel from before she was famous, and he's got just these archives that are amazing. But sitting there is this huge box set on the complete Beatles BBC sessions.
Oh, yeah.
So there are piles of stuff that the Beatles are letting this stuff out very slowly.
And I mean, it also fed the bootleg market for years because, I'm a Led Zeppelin fan, so every place I went to every, head shop to see if, I could find, Bonzo's birthday party or, all of the other sort of famous bootlegs that I think once, Led Zeppelin gets to that point is they'll start releasing that stuff because they have to have the master somewhere.
Do you have Live on Blueberry Hill?
Somewhere, probably. I mean, it's been a while. I've been trying to get it all into my iTunes, but I think my computer is sputtering, so I got to get a better backup drive.
Can we talk about Led Zeppelin for 2 minutes?
Sure.
I got some stories for you.
Great.
So JoJo Lane was married to Denny Lane from Paul McCartney's band.
Okay.
Jimmy Miller and I were producing her. She was a dear friend of mine. We lost her in 2006. So her ex-husband, Denny, was dating Helen Grant, the daughter of Peter Grant. So she's staying at my house, Helen Grant, Denny Lane, and their child, who's probably now, this was 1986.
And is Peter around still at this time?
No, Peter died.
Okay.
But he was alive at the time, right?
Okay.
Oh, he's dead now, but at the time, yes, he was alive.
Yeah.
So the phone rings, and I pick it up, and hi, this is Peter Grant. Can I talk to Helen? I said, Mr. Grant, pardon me for being unprofessional, but this is such an honor. He goes, really? I said, Mr. Grant, this is an honor. I'll go get Helen. I couldn't resist.
Yeah. The dragon of Led Zeppelin, who kept them sort of protected and helped build their myth.
But I spoke to Peter Grant for all of 20 seconds, and it's a high point of my life. I'm sorry, it's. Just...
No. We all have those. I sort of had that with Stan Lee. I think everybody has that.
All right. So in '88, there was the Led Zeppelin reunion at the 40th anniversary of Atlantic Records.
That's right. And remember who played drums?
Was it Jason Bonham?
I think it was Phil Collins.
Phil Collins. You're right. It was Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Okay. So we were there, and there were 3 backstage passes. First, my lawyer, who I got rid of later, said to me, you can't get tickets to the Atlantic party. And I said, gee, you don't even know who I am. So we got the tickets to the party. But we had the lowest backstage pass, which was orange. There were 3 sets of them.
Right.
One for the bands, then one for the buffet, and we had the buffet package, right? Thank you, Atlantic Records. So JoJo knew Jimmy Page really well and Robert Plant, and they said, can you get us backstage? I said, watch me. So I turned my backstage pass upside down. Had it hanging out of my pocket, so you knew it was a backstage pass, you didn't know which color. I marched towards the Led Zeppelin dressing room. My lawyer, JoJo, 7 people, even some people that we met, 7 or 8 of us walked right up, and JoJo walks right up to Robert. Robert, how are you? It was so much fun. So this is my Led Zeppelin stories for you.
That's great. That's great. No, I am such a big fan, and I love that double disc. How the West Was Won. They truly were a great live band. I think they were sort of better live than they were in the studio, and I just hope in the years to come, they let some of that stuff roll out.
Did you see them live?
No, I'm too young.
Okay, I saw them in '73 at the Boston Garden. And when they came out and did rock and roll, it was like a chainsaw, so you didn't know the song they were playing until Plant started singing. It was a huge chainsaw.
Huh.
And then they were supposed to come back to Boston in '78, and we had to go into the Garden to wait for tickets the next morning.
Huh.
They let us into the Boston Garden, and some of the vandals just destroyed the place. The show was canceled, so I've only seen the band twice, only once with John Bonham.
Well, again, you're lucky. You're ahead of most of us.
It was fun, but thank you for letting me indulge in my Zeppelin fun.
Oh, no. I'm a big fan. I'm happy to hear it.
I'm a fan of your book, Robert, and if you ever come to the Boston area, we'd love to have you on the show in person.
Well, ask me anytime. I'm touring on this for the next year, and I'm hoping to set up screenings on the East Coast. So I have 4 in the Northwest in October, I hope to set some up next year on the East Coast.
Oh, cool. We'd love to have you in studio, and I'll stay in touch with Megan on that.
Great.
Hey, man, if you have anything else to offer our audience?
No, that's it. If anybody's interested, you can find stills from the films and quotes from the book at bestfilmneverseen.com. It's a Tumblr account, and it's a lot of fun. I just encourage people to share their love of film.
bestfilmneverseen.com. Okay, and you can put that in Google too. bestfilmneverseen.com and.
Or my name again, Robert Elder. I'm hard to avoid at a certain point.
Super, Robert. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Hey, thanks again for having me.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Robert K. Elder, what a cool guy. What a nice interview. And after all these years, you know what I should have done during that interview? Was I should have pulled Dello Stritto's number up. Can you believe I still, in the old days, I used to remember every number. And I should know this number by heart, right? I dial it every single week. See, I'm not dialing it during the day. That's the key. So once a week, after 2.5 years, I still, maybe in 5 years we'll get it down.
Frank Dello Stritto, talking about movies.
Frank, I just talked to Robert K. Elder, The Best Film You've Never Seen. What a great book.
Okay, and what is the best film I've never seen?
Well, 35 directors champion the forgotten or critically savaged movies they love.
All right.
So you got Phil Lord on the Beaver trilogy. You've got Richard Kelly on Fearless. You got Jay Duplass on Joe versus the Volcano. Now, Duplass was involved with Cyrus and Jeff Who Lives at Home and The Puffy Chair. So he gets directors to talk about, this was John Patrick Shamley's movie, Joe versus the Volcano.
Mm-hmm.
Not one of my favorite flicks, but it's that director's, one of his forgotten classics. So what would Frank Dello Stritto's best film you've never seen be?
Let's see. An overlooked horror movie from the 1930s, which I think is the best horror movie of the 1930s, is Island of Lost Souls. I think, I hang out with the horror movie crowd, so they've all seen it, but when I mention it to most people who aren't horror movie people, they don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he brought up A Man for All Seasons, and he didn't want the director to discuss it, and the director said no one under 30 knows the film. And the editor of the book said, I was like noting that he was right.
Yeah, no, let's see, I haven't seen Man from All Seasons. When did it come out? About late 1960s? Is that it?
I would say.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since then. Now that you mention it, I can't remember the last time I've seen it on one of the cable movie channels. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Yeah, I mean, movies 40 years old. Kids today haven't seen them. Haven't seen a lot of them because they just haven't had the opportunity. They don't. A lot of these movies go in the vaults, never come out.
As I noted to Elder, I'm a cable buff, so when you don't see them on cable, they inadvertently become forgotten classics.
Classics. There's a movie I liked very much. I've only seen it once in the movies, Silent Partner, with Christopher Plummer and Elliot Gould, and I thought it was one of the best thrillers I'd seen ever. And I don't think one person in 1,000 knows what I'm talking about when I bring it up. And that would have been around late 1970s, 1980s, something like that. So yeah, I guess you could, if you can get out of your group, who tend to see the movies you've seen, and try to appreciate what the general movie-going public has the opportunity to see, and then what they haven't had the opportunity to see. I guess you could write a book like that. I know about Joe and the Volcano. I've never seen it.
You know, you can watch it at home maybe, but it's hit or miss.
Well, I know it didn't get great reviews, but I'd never seen it, so I can't comment on it.
I found it interesting at the movies. I found it curious, but like I told the author, years later I think, ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's October, and I have in front of me Vampire Over London.
You're a great man.
I am.
Reading a great book.
Oh, I'm not reading it. I'm just using it as a decor.
Okay, very good.
And I have to be up on my authors when they call in, and you're part of the furniture here.
Okay.
Take that as a compliment.
I will. I've seen your furniture. I'm quite impressed.
Okay, so now, what I'm going to say is that Frank and I are going to start picking some movies after this week's movie, which tomorrow is Rocket XM. Am I correct?
Rocket Ship XM.
Rocket Ship XM, and then next week we've got Dementia 13.
Yes.
So we'll talk about Dementia 13 next week, and then you and I should pick a couple for Halloween. I'm going to invite Lugosi on.
Okay.
Lugosi, because they've been in touch with me thanks to you and I talking. Mm-hmm. I have a woman who did a book on the Witches of Salem, but I'm probably not going to have her on the live show. We're probably going to cut a studio show with her.
Okay.
So we're going to do a lot of Halloween stuff, so you and I can put our thinking caps on, and we could pick the movies for, tomorrow is the 4th, Janis Joplin's anniversary. She died 33 years ago tomorrow.
1980.
A fellow Texan person. No, 1970, so that would be 43 years ago.
Yeah, 43 years.
I'm getting old.
Yeah, I thought 1980 sounded a bit recent, but yeah.
43 years ago, a fellow Texan, Janis Joplin, passed away. She was from Austin. And so we got Rocket Ship XM. So that would be the 4th. Then we got the 11th. So then we've got the 18th and the 25th. So we've got 2 more movies to pick. Maybe Last Man on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
We have to verify that.
Okay, I'm pretty sure it's in the public domain.
I love that movie.
Do you? Well, you're one of the few that do, but it deserves. The trouble is, its weakest part is its first few minutes. If you get through that, it starts picking up fast. But I know the first time I watched it, I said, I kind of lost interest. But then later on, I forced myself to watch the whole thing, and I was glad I did.
I think it's terrifying. I think it is the best version of I Am Legend, Richard Matheson's book. I like it better. I don't like the Will Smith version. Will Smith is the Vincent Price of the new millennium. You know that.
I didn't know that, and I'm not sure I agree, but...
He's in more science fiction movies. My God, I just saw the one with his son, and then he did the Independence Day and I, Robot. Will Smith does more science fiction than anyone.
I guess there's box office. I did not see the movie with his son. I forget what it was called.
I forget the title. I liked it. The critics panned it.
Yeah, I know the critics didn't like it. I've never spoken to anybody. I don't think it did much business because I've never spoken to anybody that's seen it.
I think it'll make money eventually. It's one of those films that the foreign box office did a little better, so Will Smith might have commanded some, box office over there. Who knows? It's an interesting movie. I thought some of the critics were unfair, but it could have been tighter. It had a lot along the lines of that Tom Cruise movie. So there's some parallels between that movie and the Tom Cruise movie. You know that one, bad.
I don't remember the name of the Tom.
Both of them. I mean, that's how disposable they were. Big bucks, disposable film.
Okay, well, they're out to get they're not trying for art, they're trying for box office. But I'm so embarrassed, I don't remember the names of those movies.
Next question is, did we review Rocket Ship XM before?
Yeah, we've had it on before, and it's a seminal movie in the sense it's made in two seminal movies come out in 1950. Rocket Ship XM is the first, comes in June, and Destination Moon is the second, comes out in August. And it was kind of a race between them, and there was almost legal action between the two, which is why in Rocket Ship XM, I'll give away a little bit of the plot, though. Yeah, this is only giving away the first few minutes. They're heading towards the moon, but they get diverted to Mars, and something we know would be absurd in today's space program. But they pulled it off then. But name a science fiction movie before 1950, and you're hard pressed. I mean, you can come up with a couple of them when you think about it, but it really starts with 1950, and it's really these two films, which both do pretty well at the box office. They're both modest budget. Rocket Ship XM is more modest than Destination Moon, and but they do well enough at the box office. And then 1951, a year later, is a big explosion. Day of the Earth Stood Still, The Thing are big hits, and it really makes the science fiction genre take root. But it starts here, and again, it was made on the cheap. It's written, produced, and directed by Kurt Newman, a man who had been in Hollywood most of his life, though you'd be hard-pressed to name movies that he made. He made The Fly in 1958, which is another low-budget movie that really took off. And this movie benefits from some of his mostly unknowns in this movie, but two of them, Lloyd Bridges and Hugh O'Brien, became big TV stars 10 years later. And again, that's probably something young viewers today say, Lloyd Bridges who? And you say, well, he's Jeff Bridges' father. Oh, yeah, but Lloyd Bridges did a lot of work, and he was a big TV star. And Hugh O'Brien made a fortune playing Wyatt Earp on television for 5 or 6 seasons in the late 1950s, and then after that he worked when he felt like it, because he had made his money, and he was very selective at roles. So the bad news is you don't see him much after that, so especially in movies. The last movie of his I can recall is Twins with Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. He plays the sperm donor who is Schwarzenegger's father. When you get him on screen and get the camera angles just right, you can see a family resemblance.
Hugh O'Brien?
Hugh O'Brien. Well, I'm saying get them on screen, do the makeup and camera angles just right, and you can see a family resemblance.
No, but it was Hugh O'Brien from this movie.
Yeah, Hugh O'Brien.
That's amazing.
No. I mean, in Twins, there's a scene between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Hugh O'Brien, and the way I give them credit, the way they filmed it, you would have thought they were father and son just by their profiles. Now, I'm sure the makeup and the camera angles and lighting did everything they could to accentuate that, but they pulled it off.
But Lloyd was probably gone, so you couldn't get Beau Bridges and Lloyd Bridges together.
Well, Lloyd is Hugh O'Brien's still with us. Lloyd died in 1998.
Before Twins.
I think he appeared in 2 Seinfeld episodes, and then he died right after. And there's actually a Seinfeld episode that is dedicated to him because he died right after he worked with Seinfeld.
That's amazing stuff.
Seinfeld. Excuse me?
Amazing stuff.
Yeah. But the actor who is the scene stealer in this is the head of the expedition. His name is John Emery, and he has such a distinctive voice and such a distinctive profile that whenever he speaks, your eyes tend to look at him. And the role I'll always remember him in is he played the devil in an episode of Thriller called The Devil's Ticket. And he made a dynamite devil, and that was a role I wish he could have played more often. But he's the head of the expedition here, and he's rather a dominant figure. But he had no choice. He's just that voice is a 1 in a million. You just go right to it. In fact, his profile and his voice was so distinctive. There was always a rumor that he was John Barrymore's illegitimate son. It seems that rumor has no foundation other than the fact that he had a voice like Barrymore and he had a profile like Barrymore.
And Mia Farrow's oldest kid is now being linked to Frank Sinatra. Have you read that?
I have not read that.
So he's not Woody Allen's kid, he's Frank's kid.
Can he sing?
He's a good-looking guy, and he does not look anything like Woody Allen. And on that note, we're off to Dementia 13 next week.
Okay, I'll speak to you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Frank.
Bye.
Frank Dello Stritto, author of Vampire Over London, Robert K. Elder, author of, and this is a long one, The Best Films You've Never Seen, 35 Directors Champion, The Forgotten, and Critically Savage Movies They Love. It is WinCam. Thank you, WinCam. Views and opinions of mine, no one else's, except for my guests. Have a great day, and we'll be back. Reeling is on next. Reeling in the years.